For years, this woman lived, trapped in a room under constant surveillance. The film begins in 2012 in the city of Toledo, Spain, inside a luxurious mansion called El Cigarral. Living there is a young woman named Vera, who always wears a skin-tight suit that covers almost her entire body. For years, she's been locked inside a single room. Strangely, unlike most kidnapping victims, Vera seems perfectly calm and comfortable because all of her daily needs are fully provided, including a television, books, nutritious food, exercise equipment, and various pieces of furniture. Sometimes Vera spends her time making clay mannequins wrapped in fabric and bandages, or designing clothes from the materials given to her, since sewing and fashion design are her favorite hobbies. Even so, every movement she makes is constantly monitored through CCTV cameras. The luxurious mansion actually belongs to Robert Ledgard, a famous plastic surgeon who employs several servants, including his head housekeeper, Marilia. The scene then shifts to Robert presenting his latest research in front of several officials, along with a fellow surgeon named Fulgencio. His research involves artificial skin that looks and feels almost identical to real human skin, but is far more durable, capable of resisting insect bites and even extreme heat. Robert names the artificial skin Gal as a tribute to his late wife, who died after suffering severe burns in a car accident. He explains that he has already tested the skin on a rat with extremely successful results. Because of that, Robert believes the artificial skin could eventually be used on humans as well.
He bautizado con el nombre de Gal, por lo que supone una barrera natural a la malaria. La piel artificial en la que he estado trabajando. Los resultados han sido espectaculares en mamíferos humanos.
After the presentation ends and the event continues with a dinner banquet, Robert has a conversation with the president of a biotechnology institute. During their discussion, Robert explains more about the technology behind his research. He reveals that he has been using transgenesis, a genetic engineering method that involves inserting pig DNA into human cells in order to strengthen the artificial skin. After hearing this, the biotechnology president immediately warns Robert that applying transgenesis to humans is strictly forbidden because it violates scientific ethics. He demands that Robert stop the research and threatens to report him to the scientific community if the experiments continue. However, Robert defends himself by claiming that his research is purely personal and meant only to expand scientific knowledge, while insisting that all of his experiments so far have only been conducted on animals.
Transgénesis. Sí, está loco. Célula de cerdo a una célula humana. Es mucho más fuerte que la nuestra. Pero eso no me impide prohibirle que continúe investigando sobre la piel.
After returning home, Robert continues his research inside his secret laboratory. However, when he goes to check on Vera, he finds her unconscious after she had slit her wrists and injured her own chest. Without wasting any time, Robert immediately takes Vera to the operating room to treat her wounds. There, he uses his artificial skin as a second layer to repair the damaged tissue caused by her injuries, allowing her body to heal and become whole again. Not long after, it is revealed that Robert has not only modified Vera's body, but has also completely reshaped her face to closely resemble his late wife, Gal. This is where suspicions begin to arise that Vera may actually be part of a much larger secret experiment Robert has been conducting all these years. After years of carrying out these experiments, Vera could be considered Robert's most successful creation, as her entire body is now covered with the artificial skin. Besides being monitored through CCTV by Marilia, Vera is also constantly watched by Robert through a large television screen in his room. At one point, Marilia warns Robert that Vera should be killed sooner or later because she may eventually try to harm herself again. According to Marilia, even though Vera appears calm and shows no obvious signs of stress, she is actually carrying deep emotional trauma and severe depression. Marilia is also worried that if Vera is allowed to live, the secret behind Robert's experiments could one day be exposed and discovered by others. Because of this, Robert eventually decides to fire all of the servants working in the mansion except for Marilia, ensuring that his research involving Vera remains hidden from the outside world.
Despida a los criados y no contrates a nadie.
After Robert leaves for work, Marilia is unexpectedly visited by her son Zeka, whom she hasn't seen in 10 years. Zeka arrives wearing a tiger costume after attending a carnival. The costume is not only part of the event, but also serves as a disguise to avoid being recognized by the police, since he is still a fugitive wanted for multiple crimes and robberies. At first, Marilia refuses to let him into the house, but Zeka insists because he needs a place to hide until things calm down. Even though she knows her son has always caused trouble, Marilia cannot ignore her maternal instincts and eventually allows him inside. While eating together, Zeka reveals that he wants Robert to perform plastic surgery on his face so he can change his identity and escape the authorities. After dinner, Zeka accidentally notices Vera through the mansion's CCTV monitors. He is immediately shocked because Vera's face looks almost identical to Robert's late wife. Seeing his reaction, Marilia quickly points a gun at her own son and orders him to leave the house. Besides being a criminal, Zika has now discovered Robert's secret experiment, which makes him even more dangerous. However, Zika easily overpowers his mother and ties her to a chair so she cannot stop him. He then begins searching the mansion until he eventually finds the room where Vera is being kept. Since the door is locked, he returns to Marilia and demands the key. Forced into a corner, Marilia reveals where the key is hidden in exchange for her freedom. But even after getting the key, Zeka leaves his mother tied up with cloth stuffed in her mouth. Without wasting any time, Zeka enters Vera's room and begins doing something inappropriate to her. Sometime later, Robert returns home and is shocked to find the mansion in complete chaos. But what enrages him the most is seeing Zika imposing himself on Vera. Without hesitation, Robert grabs his gun and shoots Zika, killing him instantly. While cleaning the blood-stained bedsheets, Marilia finally reveals a huge secret to Vera. She explains that Zika and Robert are actually half-brothers, although neither of them ever knew the truth. Marilia admits that she is the biological mother of both men. Zika was born from her marriage to a man who once worked for the Ledgard family, while Robert was the result of Marilia's relationship with Mr. Ledgard. Since Mr. Ledgard and his wife were unable to have children, Robert was taken in shortly after birth and raised as the heir to the Ledgard family. As a result, Robert grew up without ever knowing that Marilia was actually his biological mother. Even so, Marilia secretly continued to care for and love Robert throughout his life. The two sons ended up living completely different lives. Robert grew up surrounded by wealth, became a successful plastic surgeon, married Gal, and later had a daughter named Norma. Meanwhile, Zika grew up far away from his family and spent most of his life on the streets. Since childhood, he had been involved in trouble and eventually became a criminal. Around 12 years earlier, Zika returned to Marilia seeking protection because he was being hunted by the police. However, while hiding at the Ledgard family mansion, he ended up having an affair with Gal. The two eventually decided to run away together, but they were involved in a terrible accident that caused their car to burst into flames. Zeka managed to escape, while Gal became trapped inside the burning vehicle. Fortunately, Robert was able to save his wife, but from that moment on, Gal was forced to live with severe burn scars covering most of her body. For months, her family tried to hide her condition by keeping mirrors away and leaving the room in darkness. However, one day, while trying to look at Norma, who was singing outside in the yard, Gal accidentally caught a glimpse of her own reflection in the window. Unable to accept her appearance, she chose to end her life by jumping from her room right in front of her daughter.
So nací para vivir y amar, quien me quede.
Con su imagen reflejada en el cristal.
Witnessing her mother's death left Norma deeply traumatized. From that moment on, she began isolating herself from the outside world and even attempted to take her own life, though she was eventually saved and admitted to a psychiatric hospital. Sadly, a few months later, Norma is found dead, and it is implied that she took her own life after being consumed by years of trauma and depression. Returning to Vicente after being kidnapped by Robert, he wakes up chained inside an underground room. No matter how loudly he screams for help, nobody can hear him. For days, Vicente is held captive in terrible conditions and survives with nothing but water. One day, Robert comes to see him, gives him a bath, and finally offers him a small amount of food.
Por favor! ¡Aquí! ¡Sáqueme de aquí!
¡Vuélvete!
Sometime later, Robert begins carrying out his revenge plan by shaving Vicente's beard and performing vaginoplasty surgery as part of a forced gender reassignment procedure. During the operation, Robert is assisted by several doctors, including Fulgencio. However, Robert lies to them by claiming that Vicente willingly chose to undergo the surgery without any coercion. The transformation process takes a very long time and is carried out gradually in order to achieve perfect results. Eventually, Robert reveals that everything he has done is meant as revenge because he believes Vicente assaulted Norma. Vicente desperately tries to explain that it was all a misunderstanding, but Robert refuses to listen and continues with his plan. As part of both his revenge and his obsession with his late wife, Robert slowly transforms Vicente into a woman now known as Vera. This is where it is finally revealed that Vera was originally a man named Vicente who had been forcibly turned into a woman. Robert even reshapes Vicente's face to resemble Gal because he wants to recreate the image of his deceased wife. Over the course of nearly 6 years, Robert continues performing multiple procedures until Vicente's body is completely transformed into that of a woman. Since the artificial skin covering Vicente's body remains extremely sensitive, Robert also provides special clothing to protect her from injuries. One day, while Robert is helping zip up Vicente's outfit, Vicente takes the opportunity to attack him and attempt an escape. However, Robert had already anticipated this possibility and immediately locks every exit using a remote control system. With no way out, Vicente becomes desperate and slits his own throat. Fortunately, Robert manages to save him by stitching the wound. A few weeks later, Vicente recovers from the injury, and from that point on, he begins living under his new identity as Vera.
Vera.
After that, Robert begins giving Vera dresses and makeup products so she can slowly adapt to her new life as a woman. However, Vera still cannot accept the forced transformation. She destroys the dresses and returns all of the makeup Robert gives her. The only thing she keeps is an eyebrow pencil, which she uses to write dates on the walls of her room so she can keep track of how long she has been trapped there. Even while living in captivity, Vera still has a television in her room, although the available channels are very limited. To maintain her sanity, she spends her time practicing yoga and eventually develops a new hobby of creating clay mannequins.
En la cama de un hospital, en la cárcel, sin acceso. Un lugar que nadie puede estar.
Several years later, Robert hires Marilia to work at the mansion again. However, Marilia is forbidden from entering Vera's room and is only allowed to monitor her through CCTV cameras because Robert considers Vera a special patient who requires constant supervision. For years, Vera continues living in isolation inside the room and is frequently given medication by Robert in an attempt to make her slowly forget her past. Meanwhile, Vicente has been considered missing for 6 years, and eventually his mother, Susie, begins losing hope of ever seeing her son again. No one realizes that Vicente is actually still alive and has been forced to live under a new identity as Vera since 2006. Returning to the present after the horrifying incident involving Zika, Vera is finally allowed to leave her room by Robert. She even promises to stay by Robert's side and continue being with him. Many of you might find it confusing to see Vera becoming close to the very person who destroyed her life. This situation can actually be explained through a psychological phenomenon known as Stockholm Syndrome, a condition where a victim gradually develops sympathy, emotional attachment, or dependency toward the person responsible for hurting them. This usually happens when someone has been held captive for a long period of time and relies entirely on their captor for attention, food, or basic survival needs. That is exactly what slowly happened to Vera after spending years trapped in isolation and becoming completely dependent on Robert to survive. For the first time, Robert allows Vera to leave the mansion and go shopping, although she is still under Marilia's supervision. Secretly, Marilia carries a gun inside her bag because she still does not fully trust Vera, despite having monitored her for years.
Perdón por el retraso, Marilia.
Vamos, niña.
Not long after, Fulgencio arrives at Robert's house demanding answers about something that has been bothering him. He shows Robert a newspaper article featuring Vicente, who has been listed as a missing person for the past 6 years. Fulgencio remembers that Vicente was the man they performed vaginoplasty on years earlier. Because of this, he begins to suspect that Robert has been secretly holding Vicente captive and using him as the subject of his artificial skin experiments without informing the other doctors involved in the surgery. However, Robert immediately denies everything and claims that Vicente is now living in Los Angeles under a new identity. Fulgencio then presents evidence showing that Vicente's identity documents had been forged by Robert. Hearing this, Robert becomes furious, throws Fulgencio out of the house, and even points a gun at him to force him to leave. Right after that, Vera returns home from shopping, and in front of Fulgencio, she admits that she is no longer Vicente, and that she has willingly stayed by Robert's side all this time without being forced by anyone. Hearing this, Fulgencio immediately falls silent and quickly leaves the mansion. However, after Fulgencio leaves, Vera begins to feel shaken and slowly starts remembering who she truly is. After seeing Vicente's photo printed in the newspaper, memories of her past begin returning to her mind. At the same time, Vera also notices the drawer where Robert keeps his gun. Later that night, while spending time with Robert, Vera pretends to ask permission to go downstairs to get something. However, she secretly takes Robert's pistol from the drawer in his office and hides it inside her bag. Not long after returning to the bedroom, Vera suddenly points the gun at Robert and shoots him.
Pero me lo prometiste.
Hearing the gunshot, Marilia immediately rushes in while carrying her own gun, and she is shocked to see Robert already lying lifeless. Before Marilia can do anything, Vera shoots her as well, killing her instantly. In the end, after being kidnapped, imprisoned, and forced to abandon his identity as a man for 6 years, Vicente finally succeeds in reclaiming his freedom. Vicente is finally able to leave behind his identity as Vera and return to being who he truly is. Even though his physical appearance is no longer that of a man, his true identity remains Vicente. For the first time in years, Vicente finally returns to Susie's clothing store. Many things in the place have changed, but the only things that remain the same are Susie herself and Cristina, who is still faithfully working there. Vicente feels relieved because he is finally able to see Susie again after disappearing for so many years without a trace. However, neither of them recognizes Vicente because his appearance has completely changed. Slowly, Vicente tries to explain that even though his body has been changed into a woman's body, he is still Vicente. He also tells that for the past 6 years, he was kidnapped and forced to undergo multiple surgeries until he lost his former identity. At first, Cristina finds the story impossible to believe because everything sounds so unbelievable. But when Vicente shows her the dress he's wearing, Cristina suddenly falls silent. She remembers that it was the same dress Vicente wanted to give her 6 years earlier before he disappeared. From that moment on, Cristina finally believes that the woman standing in front of her is truly Vicente. Realizing the truth, Cristina can only cry as she imagines the suffering Vicente endured for so many years. Not long after, Susie walks over to them, and Vicente finally reveals that he is Vicente, the son who had been declared dead by the police all this time. After years of torture, losing his identity, and living in captivity, Vicente is finally able to reunite with the people he loves. But even so, Vicente still has to carry the lifelong burden of living inside a body that has now been changed into a woman's body, and that is the end of the story.